All right, Adam, it's week 5 already of the college football season. It always amazes me, and I say this every year, how fast the season goes. Like we
Yeah.
spend so many months like talking and talking, talking, can't wait for the season. Then all of a sudden you blink and you're like on week 5. So it's crazy, but I'm here in not so sunny Orlando. I came a little bit early. It's a tad, not super windy, but definitely cloudy. And it's not supposed to be nice this weekend, but you're still home in Colorado. You'll be out here soon. You excited for this?
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I have my flight is boarding at 4:45 a.m. tomorrow. I think you had a similar early boarding call today, right?
Yeah, I left my house at 3:40 this morning, and it was a 6 a.m. flight. And Tyler King from the Denver Gazette was on my flight, and so it was nice to see a familiar face and lots of Buff fans on the flight, and people that work for the Buffs were on the flight as well, work for CU. So lots of familiar faces, or at least friendly Buff faces, and lots of Buff logos. So there's a lot of people come down, and as you were kind of joking, like. There's probably not a whole lot of people other than Buff fans that want to travel to Orlando right now.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I put out a tweet yesterday that this is a new one to add to the list is tracking a hurricane
Yeah.
before a Colorado football game. We just haven't had that in the past, and uh, it doesn't feel like the Big 12 when you're traveling out to Orlando. But this is the new Big 12, and there are parts of it that are exciting. I certainly wish the weather would have been a little bit nicer so that we can spend the few hours we have of free time
Right.
before covering the game to venture out and see a little bit. So. I don't know about you. I think, well, I'm coming in later. So by the time I get there, I think I'm just holding up in my hotel room. I don't know if I'm really going to get to see the sights out there, but
Well,
I am looking forward to the football game for sure.
yeah, and I was chatting with my wife when I first got to the hotel, and she was, "Are you going to go out and do anything?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. It's not like super nice out, and and I mean, even it's not terrible right now, but it's like 90 degrees and humid, and that's not really fun to be out in. So,
Yeah.
I'll go up tomorrow and check out the stadium and and see what that's like up there. But we'll see. It's also not as fun to do like sightseeing when you're by yourself, so.
Sure.
If my wife was here, then she'd have itinerary, and we'd be loaded up with things. But I know you brought your wife several times on trips as well, and makes it more fun. But yeah, the football game I'm looking forward to. I think it's going to be really cool to see just a new venue, a team that CU's never played before. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, new is always exciting. And again, it's so early in the season. It's just hard to have a great pulse on these teams. I think it's pretty safe, though, that we can say UCF is a good football team.
Mhm.
Is it a great football team? I don't think you could say that yet. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised that UCF is a full two touchdown favorite over Colorado. I expected that to be, maybe high single digits because they're at home and some of the weather concerns. And if it does downpour, that might play in UCF's favor.
Yeah.
You give Gus Malzahn, who is pretty established as an offensive wizard, I think at this point, an extra week to prepare because UCF had a bye week, but
Mhm.
you go back to their last game, they had to come back from 21 points down against, an inferior, on paper at least, TCU team. So I know that game was on the road for UCF. So there are a lot of signs that point towards UCF, but not in my head to a 14-point advantage going into this game.
Yeah, and I've always been high on UCF. Like since the summer, I've been saying I think that they're one of the more underrated teams in the country. I think they're really good. But I'm like you 3 weeks in. It's like, well, how good are they really? Because their first couple of games, they're beating some inferior opponents pretty easily, and then TCU, they did have to come back, like you mentioned. I mean, they were kind of dead in the water, sort of like CU was last week. They were sort of dead in the water, and all of a sudden rallied and came back and got that win. So I don't know how good they are. I think their offense is really good. I love the running back, RJ Harvey, and their quarterback. I think can give CU some problems because CU's just struggled against running quarterbacks, and so. I think it's going
Yeah.
to be tough for CU to stop them. I don't know how good their defense is, and that's where I'm kind of on this one. It's like, is this going to be a shootout, or what are we going to see here? Because I think UCF's going to get their points and their yards.
Yeah. If you tell me the rain is going to be minimal, kind of like what we saw last week, at Folsom Field, it was coming down a decent amount of points during the game, and it
Yeah.
was kind of chilly rain towards the end of it. So it wasn't great throwing conditions, and we, still saw some amazing things by Shador late in that football game. If it's like that, then I think this is absolutely going to be a shootout, not in the 60s or the 50s, because Robert Livingston in this defense have proven to be pretty solid for Colorado, and I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to get boat raced. But this is the toughest matchup for them, I think. And you mentioned the fact that KJ Jefferson is a dual threat, and I think that's got to be the number one concern going into this football game, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I would
last
think
week,
so.
Sawyer Robertson, who's not even a dual threat quarterback, goes for almost 100 yards on the ground. And now you're going up against a quarterback that is a threat on the ground.
Yeah, and in 4 games, Colorado's played two dual threat quarterbacks, and those are the two biggest rushing totals against the Buffs this year was Cam Miller of North Dakota State and Sawyer Robinson last week. They both had over 80 yards. No running back has had more than 74 against the Buffs, but those two quarterbacks have, and so both those guys made life difficult on the CU defense, and those quarterback draws. I think it was Shane Cokes talked about this week, like we know that UCF's going to see that and they're going to do it. We got to stop it. And they have not shown that they can stop it. I mean, even Dylan Raiola is not a running quarterback, but he burned them on one or two, quarterback runs, out of Nebraska. So he didn't finish with a lot of rushing yards, but he had a couple nice runs. So yeah, I think that's got to be the number one concern. I mean, RJ Harvey, I think, is better than any running back they've faced, but I think that the running quarterback is a bigger concern.
Yeah. But again, I have a hard time after watching the improvement we've seen from this defense. And I saw Andre Hart was talking with Mark Johnson yesterday, and he said, we've gone from being a second half team to being pretty close to a full 4-quarter football team defensively. And so if they can do that again, it's not like, UCF was just going crazy on TCU early on.
Yeah.
So this is not a juggernaut Colorado is going to face. It's a good football team, and if Colorado's offense doesn't show a little bit more polish and get out to a faster start than we've seen in some games, then this could be a tough matchup. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a highly riveting football game, and that's kind of the thing we've expected going into Big 12 conference play was this
Mhm.
conference of cannibalizing itself, but it being really entertaining football. You have BYU knock off Kansas State and everybody scratching their head. And it's like, well,
Right.
you're gonna be doing that every week in the Big 12
Mhm.
going forward. And UCF is gonna lose some games that right now you think they're going to win. They're going to lose some that you think they're going to win right now. And so that's the fun part of this, but it makes it very difficult to make predictions on these games leading up to them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you make a good point. I think in this conference, there's going to be, I mean, you mentioned BYU over Kansas State. They didn't just beat them, it was 38-9. I mean, it was, I think a lot of people were shocked by that. I think every week, kind of to your point, there might be a shocking game in the Big 12 where you look at it like, whoa, where'd that come from? And maybe that's this one this week. I mean, I think,
I don't. Yeah, that's the thing is, I don't think this should be a shocking result, but I guess
right.
by the point spread, it would be. I guess.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is with them being a two touchdown favorite, I think a lot of people would be surprised if Colorado came down here and won. But I think that's just gonna be the nature of the Big 12, like, as you mentioned, and so it makes it a fun conference. I think it'll be entertaining every week. I do have concerns with the Colorado offense has not been as explosive as I thought they were going to be. I think that through 4 games, there's still a lot to be desired for me from that offense, and they needed the Hail Mary on the last play just to get to over 24, to get to that 31 mark, and they finished with 38. But I mean, they struggled for big chunks of that game the other night, and just a couple weeks ago they had only 10 points out in Nebraska, and they only put up 29 against CSU or 28 against CSU. So I think there's times I've thought, man, this offense is really dynamic. They could throw up 35, 40 points at any time, but we haven't really seen that from them. And so going on the road, it makes me a little bit concerned about this offense that, can they get that together? Even against the defense, I don't think is great, but I think that they might struggle a little bit because they're on the road.
Yeah, it's the conundrum of this should be a really explosive Colorado offense, but they haven't shown it quite yet. So are they going to become that? And could it be this Saturday?
Yeah,
Or because you haven't seen it yet through 4 quarters and really just felt great about the facets of the offense in terms of a matchup that it's hard to predict if that will happen on Saturday. So,
right.
but UCF has 1 sack through 3 games. So they have not been getting after quarterbacks the
Yeah.
way some of Colorado's earlier opponents have. So maybe that's one area. UCF is going to dial up some stuff. That's going to be every other team's MO through the season. That's just going to be their game plan. But maybe this is at least a game where Colorado's offense can get on track against a UCF team that is known more for their offense than their defense.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest keys of this game, and one of the things that makes it tricky to predict is UCF really not that good at getting at the quarterback, or um, are they going to find some holes in Colorado like Baylor did and get to Shador 4, 5, 6 times? And I think that's going to be a real key in this game. If Shador, we've always said this. I mean, if he's got a clean pocket and he's got time, I think he's going to pick him apart, right? But if he's running for his life like he was all last week, he still threw for 340 some yards. But I think it makes it more difficult to get that offense rolling if he's getting hit a lot. And so, um, yeah, I think there's so many reasons why this is hard to project, and it's still early in the season. It's almost I think it'll be easier to project these games when we're in 8 games in, because you've still got uh, teams like a UCF that most of their games have been, they've only played three, but two of them have been against teams you should beat pretty easily, and they did beat them pretty easily. And so it's hard to really know how good they are. I think it's really hard to know, kind of where CU is at this point too.
Yeah. This doesn't really feed into any of the predictions or preview of this game, but one of the
Mhm.
things I'm anxious, Brian, is pregame. We've heard Coach Prime mention a couple times that, they're it kind of hinted that there are some guys that want a red shirt on this Colorado team. We haven't seen anything get announced on social media, and so we've got to kind of do a roll call before the game and see who's all suited up out there. We've already seen UNLV's quarterback, shock the nation by
Mhm.
announcing that he plans to go in the portal, and Bear Alexander from USC, a defensive lineman, announced that as well. We haven't seen any of that from Colorado, and hopefully, it's pretty minimal. But I don't think Coach Prime mentions that if there's not something there that we're going to find out on Saturday.
Yeah, and I don't know. Did you see his coach's show with Romy Bean?
Yeah.
And so I haven't seen the whole show. I did see that one little clip where he said, this is the week that guys do that, and so you might see some different people out there. I don't know if he was referring to Colorado or just in general, but it will be interesting. I think uh, in this day and age, I think for guys like you and I, this fifth game, the roll call is maybe a little bit more important than other games. You're like, okay, who's made that decision to not stick with this team? And so it'll be interesting, especially a road game because they only bring they can only bring a certain number of guys. Whereas like last week, pretty much everybody dressed. Whereas this week it's going to be like, okay, who's actually here? And so if there's some key, if I think if all the key guys are there this week, you feel pretty good going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are any danger of having like a UNLV situation where a starter,
Right.
leaves the program. I think it would be somebody that still has their red shirt that's had a minimal role. And I'm not going to speculate, but I'll be honest. I looked down the eligibility chart and looked to see who still has their red shirt and kind of, okay,
Yeah.
this is a guy to make sure he's out there pregame on Saturday. And so we'll be out there early to do that. And hopefully it's minimal. It doesn't sound like, Coach Prime's overly concerned about it, but just that he
Right.
mentioned that, this is one of those situations he'd like to call Gus Malzahn and kind of get his advice in terms of how
Right.
he's handling it because it is happening across the country. And I mean, we could spend the next half an hour debating the UNLV quarterback situation and all that. Obviously, it's not good for the game of college football, but it's part of it now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And like you, I'm not going to mention any specific names that I think could be on that type of list for Colorado. But for me, if there are guys like that, it's going to be to me. This is one of the dangers of going with a transfer portal heavy team is that you've got guys that maybe were a starter somewhere else. They come here and they're no longer playing a whole lot, and they're sitting behind people like, well, why did I come here then? And so it might be, I think it's gonna be guys like that, like depth pieces that maybe thought they would play more and they're not, and they're hardly ever getting on the field. Maybe they're only doing special teams or whatever, and they say, I don't want to waste a year by doing special teams for this team. And so I could see those, being situations like that. And they may not hurt you right now, but when you get to game 7, 8, and you have some injuries, those are guys that could really help you. So it will be interesting to see, what pregame looks like. I guess follow myself and Adam because we'll tweet out whoever we see and don't see out there.
So Dallin Hayden's supposed to be back in the mix. Who starts at running back this week? You got I think three options, but I think
Yeah.
CU even looks to four at that position.
Do you think they look at 4 now?
Maybe not, maybe not, but in certain situations, I think they like to have Charlie out there.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like
But
Charlie played one
but
snap last week, and so it kind of feels like he's become the odd man out.
yeah,
So
he's
I
and he's
think,
still contributing on special teams. He's still
yeah,
got a
yeah,
role, and
right.
yeah,
But as far as the running back rotation, I would be surprised if he's in the mix. I do think it's down to 3. Um, they've had Isaiah started 2 weeks ago, and then Micah started last week, and so it could be down this week. I mean, that could just be one of those positions where um, I don't know if it matters who starts. I think it's kind of whatever package they have in right off the bat, because we saw even 2 weeks ago against CSU, Isaiah Augustus started, but Micah Welch got the first carry, and it was on the same possession. So,
yeah.
um, it's gonna be one of those three. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Dallin, but um, it wouldn't surprise me any of those three guys.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta keep pace with them a little bit on the ground. You're certainly, I think, what is it? UCF is pretty much a 2-to-1 run to pass ratio, where CU is kind
Yeah,
of 2-to-1 pass to run.
it's I think it's 72% or something like that of UCF's offensive plays are runs. So that's almost 3 to 1.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
they're
a
very
team. It's a
run.
team.
Yeah,
It's a team you can't have a lot of three and outs offensively against.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No question because they're going to chew up the clock. And
Yeah,
I think this is also one that you have to. Buff fans have got to understand. I think UCF's going to get their yards. I mean, they average the number one running team in the country. They average 375 yards a game. And again, you can talk about their opponents. Sam Houston and New Hampshire. I think week 1. TCU's not exactly a defensive juggernaut, but they're still putting up a lot of yards because they got capable guys. I think UCF you can pencil them in for 200 plus on the ground, and I think nobody should feel bad about that if UCF gets 200 plus. It's to me, it's almost like if Air Force gets 200 yards rushing on you, it's like, well, okay, you expect that with Air Force, but did they throw for a bunch of yards? And you hope that's no. I think if UCF gets 250, 300 yards rushing, uh, I don't worry about it if they don't have a whole lot of passing yards.
it's been quiet out there. No bulletin board material. But
Yeah,
what about Richard Sherman referring to Travis Hunter as a receiver, being a bland receiver? Like that might be the worst take I've heard this year, honestly.
yeah. And who was the guy that was with him that agreed with him?
I don't. I just saw the Richard Sherman part.
It was he was doing a podcast. It was somebody. Oh, I think it was Amon Ross St. Brown,
Okay.
and they were both saying he was agreeing with him. It's like what are they watching the same Travis that we're watching? Because he is the least bland receiver I think I've ever covered. I don't get that.
I don't think Travis is the type of guy though that like needs that to fuel him. Some
No,
guys might kind of need that extra push. I don't think that's in Travis Hunter's DNA.
I think Travis just if he sees that he probably laughs and
Well, no, he responded on social media and he said, quote, let me play football.
yeah.
Basically, where's the direct quote here? But yeah, I was like, what, why? Why does this need to be a discussion?
Well, and it's yeah, when you're that big of a star, people are going to discuss it, but it is funny how much time is spent, airtime is spent debating, is Travis a corner? Is Travis a receiver? Can he do both in the NFL? Can he do both in college? And I'm going to side with Travis's, what you just saw right there. Just let him play football. He's fun to watch,
Yeah.
and yeah, and look, he's the least bland receiver I've ever covered, I think. I mean, he's really stinking good. And when you see like the catch he made against North Dakota State in the end zone, um, there's zero bland about that. I mean, I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of receivers that are much worse. There's a lot of receivers in the NFL that are not as good as Travis Hunter.
Richard Sherman has always had an opinion. He was actually, when he was a recruit at Compton, Colorado was recruiting him,
Hmm.
and I've had long conversations with him, and they were great conversations because he was just a very charismatic personality. But
Yeah.
there were times you go, okay, and that has continued on throughout his career.
Yes, he's in the right job as an analyst because he- those guys need opinions and he's got opinions.
Yeah,
You'll have to agree with him, but yeah, that's quite the opinion to call Travis Hunter bland. So yeah, I think Travis, I expect Travis Hunter to go out and prove his non-blandness again this week and and be really good. I mean, and I think as long as until he doesn't have a 100-yard game, I'm going to project that he has a 100-yard game.
yeah. No, I think that's as safe a bet as you could place on this upcoming football game.
Yeah, because I think I'm not sure there's a receiver, a quarterback receiver trust uh, in the country better than Shador and Travis right now. And I think, if Shador needs something, he's going to trust Travis, and he's going to give him the ball. And TCU had a receiver that had over 200 yards, right?
TCU.
Yeah, didn't TCU have a receiver? He had a big game against
Uh,
UCF.
okay.
So yeah, I expect Travis to have a big game, but I'm also curious to see. Every week we kind of talk about who other than Travis steps up because you expect Travis to do it, but you have the two Florida guys. You have Jimmy Horn and LeJohntay Wester, who are both Florida guys, and they're coming home. Um, you have Will Shepherd as well, but like, who do you think steps up besides Travis?
I'm going Will Shepherd actually.
Are you?
I think that he has underperformed to his
Hmm.
ability so far, and it's only a matter of time before that kind of matches up a little bit better than it has early on the season. Even LeJohntay Wester had some drops early on, and he started to settle in. I think that's going to happen for Will Shepherd, and I hope he's gotten some genuine pats on the back this last week,
Yeah,
because at the end of it, it didn't end up mattering, but that's a tough one to carry with you as a receiver. And I think because he is a senior, he's a college graduate that has been through some tribulations early in his college career playing at Vanderbilt with, maybe not as much talent as some of those teams he went against in the SEC and still finding a way to make a lot of plays.
yeah,
I think that somebody that's a veteran like that is going to bounce back from that drop at the end of the Baylor game and have a nice performance. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of guys on this team coming back home to Florida, and you think a couple of them are going to show out, but there's also been times guys have gone home in the past and it's almost too much for them. Remember Montana Lemonius Craig was made a captain to go out to USC, and I don't even know, did he catch a
yeah.
football in that game?
I don't remember. Yeah, but
So, sometimes going home is more distraction,
mhm.
whereas Will Shepherd is, hey, I've got to bounce back from last week.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement on Will, and maybe it's this week. I'm going with Jimmy Horn because I think that he had the monster opening game against North Dakota State, and he's been very, very quiet in the last three games. I don't think he had 198 against North Dakota State. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I don't think he has even 100 yards total the last three games, and so he's been pretty quiet. I think that going home to Florida. Yeah, Coach Prime loves his Florida guys, right? And I think he's going to look to Jimmy Horn to have a big game coming home to Florida. And not that they're going to force it to him, bless you. Not that they're going to force it to him, but I think Jimmy Horn is due, and I think that this could be the week for him. And I would not be surprised if he's the guy. I think Will, to your point, maybe I don't know if he has necessarily a huge game, but he needs to have a couple big catches to kind of get back on track as well.
He will. I think we saw enough behind the scenes stuff and in the open practice they had to see that he's
Yeah.
as talented as any receiver on this roster, probably not named Travis Hunter. I mean, Travis is
Right.
just a different breed, but he would have been a number one receiver on many Colorado teams in the past, and I think he's going to show that at some point.
Yeah, he's really good, and the drop aside, he's an exceptional player, and I'm looking forward to his first big game as a Buff. He hasn't had it yet, but it's coming, and maybe it's this week, maybe it's next week. I don't know, but his big week is coming. So, um,
Before we move on, I've
yeah,
asked about like 20 people this week if Will Shepherd catches that ball, does he get in the end zone or does he fall short? And I've gotten like pretty much split responses on that.
yeah, yeah, and I believe he would have been short of the end zone, and they would have had a tough time getting another playoff. But I can see the argument people have made to me that, he was only falling because he was trying to compensate because he knew he was dropping the ball, that he would have kept his feet. And maybe that's true. You'd like to think that's true, but we'll never know. What do you think?
I think if he catches it cleanly, he's in. But yeah, obviously, if it was anywhere near him pulling it in off his chest, I mean, I think Colorado doesn't have enough time
Yeah.
to get up there and clock the ball.
Yeah. It would have been really close. And in hindsight, well, I'm just going to call it a good thing that he dropped it because it worked out.
Colorado's 3-1, so that's what
That's all
matters.
that matters. So let's get to predictions on this game. I mean, are they going to be 4-1, Adam?
I don't like the 14-point spread. I think that's too many points.
Mhm.
I thought it would be, 7.5 to 9, maybe. And I get that Gus Malzahn has had this bye week for extra preparation and um, not knowing what the weather is going to be. It's hard to predict, okay, because if it's a downpour all of a sudden, that really benefits UFC's personnel and what they try to do offensively versus what Colorado's trying to do on a
Yeah.
regular basis. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. So going out to this one, I think I'm going to have to pick UCF to win. It's going to
Yeah.
be I'm going to go 34-31.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like this matchup for Colorado. I definitely think they can win. As I said earlier, I've felt since the summer like UCF is one of the most underrated teams. I had them in I'm an AP voter. I had them in the top 25 the previous 2 weeks. I only dropped them out this past week because of teams like BYU that I felt needed to be in there, and UCF was off. But they're like my number 26. I think they're really good, and I don't know how good they are, but I think they're really dangerous in the run game. And I like what CU's done on the run defense, but they haven't been like dominant on the run defense, and they haven't played anybody like this. I think UCF is gonna chew them up a little bit and gain some yards on the ground. And KJ Jefferson is that type of quarterback that gives CU some issues. So I just don't like this matchup for CU. I've said this week on other podcasts I've done that I actually think this is their toughest Big 12 game.
Really?
I think Utah's better. I think K-State and Oklahoma State are better, but they get them all in Boulder, and I like them and I like CU in Boulder better than anywhere else. So I actually think this might be their toughest Big 12 game. And and I
Okay.
and I so I'm going UCF. I also think the spread is too big, but my score is not going to show that as much. I'm gonna go UCF 34, Colorado 21. I think that it's just I think it's a tough one for CU.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to buy that much stock on UCF being the toughest Big 12 game. I'm still going Utah there. But
It
in
might be.
terms of
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of the remaining road games, I think you're right.
Yeah. The only reason I say tougher than Utah is because Utah's in Boulder. And you're probably
Yeah.
right. Utah's a much better team. I think that's always a tough matchup for CU. So maybe that one's tougher. I can go with that one. But I think this is one of the toughest games on the schedule. And I will say this, I mean, 3-1 through 4 games, I think the Buffs are on schedule, right? The one thing that Coach Prime has always said, really since last December, people think that this Colorado team pumps his chest to say they're going to the playoff and everything. They've never really said that this offseason. The entire goal that Coach Prime has laid out, many times is bowl game, right? And I think they're on schedule for that bowl game with a 3-1. I think they're still on schedule if they lose this game. I don't think this is a must win. It would be a great win, and I think that would put them ahead of schedule. But I think this is one you can, get through this one and get back home.
But if you do want to shoot higher and contend for a Big
Absolutely,
12 championship, then this is a huge football game, and
absolutely, right.
this would make a statement. Big Fox Big Noon Kickoff is going to be there. It's going to be again on national television, and you're 4-1 going into the bye week. It's going to look different from a perception standpoint than coming back 3-2.
Yeah, absolutely. And I being a 14-point underdog though, and on the road, if they're competitive well, if they win this thing or it's a close game, I think that Colorado people should look at Colorado favorably, coming off of this one. So I think this is a good opportunity for CU. I think they definitely can win it. They certainly got the athletes to do it. I'm just going UCF in this one, and we'll see what happens. I'd be happy to be wrong. I'll
Me
definitely
too.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely admit that I'm wrong if I am. So
It's not fun traveling across the country and then having to go talk to a bummed out football team after the game.
right,
So
right.
I don't think that is not being non-biased and being upholding your journalistic integrity to admit that these road trips are a lot more fun when you see smiles on people's faces.
Well, and I'll say this too, from a journalist perspective. I guess we don't root. I'm gonna root, I guess, for a win because they have a bye week next week, which means we don't have a lot of access. And so, if they win, there's more likely that we'll get more people at the podium and we have more content to fill out the bye week. Whereas if
There
they
you go.
lose, then there's a good possibility there's not a whole lot of people at the podium and we're struggling to fill content next week. So,
Yeah.
I'm gonna root for a win because of that.
Yeah. And always fun to go see a new stadium. Like I said
Right.
earlier, new is exciting. So even though it feels strange to fly that far for a conference game, it is something we need to embrace now because it is what it is.
Well, and I also feel like I don't know about you, but like my all these years covering CU, every time I've gone on the road and they've won a game, uh, there's like some extra measure of satisfaction from the team, and it almost feels like you stole a game because you went into somebody's backyard and beat them. And I think that this team is capable of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, any other thoughts before we get out of here?
So you already got some food out there, right? I
I
think
did.
I saw on social media.
I grabbed lunch and a really good lunch spot. I went there thinking it was like a deli, like you just sit down and eat, but it wasn't. There's no restaurant. You have to like order your lunch. And so I had to like, she opens the door and says, no, you have to order it online. So I went and sat in my car, ordered it and waited for 15 minutes and then went back to the door and picked it up. But really good deli. It was, dang, what's it called? Oh, where is it? Ghost Kitchen. That's what it is. I'm trying to look at my wrapper over there. Ghost Kitchen in Orlando.
Okay.
So
Well, I got a list of all the fish that are caught, right off the coast there in Florida.
there you
So
go.
that's going to be, I'm going to try to find some place for takeout to at least get one meal of fish in there. And then I'm just going to get caught up in the hotel room and watch hotel TV, I think, until kickoff.
I think that's probably a good idea. And yeah, we'll see what we have in the press box, right? At least we
That's
know at
true.
least
That's
one
true.
meal's in the press box. So
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll see you out there in hopefully less than 24 hours.
yeah, safe travels to you, and I'll see you in Orlando.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.